Welcome to Finding Neutral, Nick.
Welcome to Finding Neutral, Aaron.
Welcome to Finding Neutral, Travis.
You are very welcome.
It is the hardest part of motorcycling.
That's what I hear.
Debatably.
And on this podcast number 9.
9?
I have no idea how many we've done.
11.
This is podcast number 54.
532.
So we're going to talk about Nick's idea here. We're going to do the motorcycle scene.
Both in the macro and in the micro.
Yeah, so we'll talk about basically what motorcycling, as far as the type of folks you're going to meet, the different cultures that come around through it, at least from the American point of view. I have no idea what the hell they do in like Indonesia, but
they ride scooters.
Lots of scooters. There are
Scooter
people.
gang.
Yeah, absolutely are people.
People 300 GTI.
So we'll talk about it from that perspective and focus in more as far as what we experience here in Cincinnati, which is pretty hilarious. So,
Cat's out of the bag. Now our subscriber knows where we're located.
Cincinnati. We're located in Cincinnati.
We let that cat out of the bag a long time ago.
It's really not that big of a deal.
Top secret.
I always hate that online when people are like afraid to say what city they're from. I'm like, there's like 3 million people that live around here. You're not going to find me.
Well, even if they do, what are they going to do? We're nobodies.
I know, we're nobody. Like, it just doesn't matter.
Well, you say that now, but by the time we get to episode 583, we might be famous.
We're still going to be nobodies.
You never know.
Those would be great problems to have.
Yep. I'll worry about that when I get there.
We'll have to buy our own compound.
I'll have to like put the piece of tape over my license plate.
Yeah, I was going to say, your head's covering the one behind you.
That one doesn't belong to me, so.
Yeah. How's your life lock? You got that? Get that set up?
Yeah, I better.
Oh, no. I'm square there. I already had my identity stolen once. That sucked. So, Nick, you're new to motorcycling overall, comparatively to Travis and myself.
Mm-hmm.
What did you experience coming into motorcycling culture, motorcycling scene? How was that for you?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, I feel that the motorcycling community as a whole is very welcoming, regardless of, what you ride, how you ride. Generally, I would say 95% of people are cool and they're just happy that you ride. So I think that's great. And then, like, going in further to the motorcycle scene itself, I can't say I really knew what to expect. I, for the most part, started on my own. So I probably didn't do any type of group riding for about 2 or 3 months. And then that was when I had found a group of people locally online, the Cincinnati Riders, which they have a Discord, they have a forum that's not very active. And for the most part, I would say that the people that I met through that group, they were decent riders. And I think we did like 2 group rides early in that first season. And then I met you guys later that season. And then I did an actual trip down to the Gap with them this past fall. But other than that, I mean, they really don't ride that much.
They don't ride here in this area locally that much.
But they just, yeah, I would say. Like, they don't arrange rides or anything, whereas, like, Bike Life, on the other hand, I feel like they arrange rides at least weekly, if not more.
Well, before we get into Bike Life and all of their stories, as you're coming into you're new to motorcycling,
Mm-hmm.
you're coming into this, you don't know anyone yet, largely.
Locally.
And what were your thoughts? Like, did you think you were going to meet people through motorcycling?
Well, I figured I would.
And of those thoughts, as you're coming into it, what type of people did you think you were going to meet? Just like just think caricatures.
Yeah, honestly, that's a great question because I don't really think that I had a picture of who I would meet before I met anybody.
And I like the reason I bring it up is I started off dirt biking, which is it's a different way to start. So when you're dirt biking, you have to go to a special place to go ride dirt bikes. So you run into basically folks that are really similar to yourself because that's what's attracted to dirt bikes, and then you have to go to a special place. You end up meeting folks that are a lot like you a lot earlier on because it's such a focused discipline. Where street bikes, I feel like, is a much broader thing, and there's different folks that ride different bikes, and even folks that ride the same bikes may ride them in different ways. But coming into motorcycling, I think everybody knows. I joke around and call them the pirates. But like folks who tend to ride Harleys or American V-twin, that type of rider, the stereotype, and then the stereotype like a sport bike rider, the fast boy with like, back in my day it was spiky bleach tip hair and that kind of stuff, doing wheelies and crap through traffic. There were those guys, and then as you got more and more into it, there was like the dorky guys that rode things like dual sports. Those have always been generally considered like a dorky bike.
Yeah, and I would say that I met people that kind of fit all of those different subsets. There's, the guy that has the Rocket 3, the cruiser bro. There's ADV bro. I have another guy that was dual sport. He had like a WR250. I would say, though, it's interesting to think that me being on a super sport, I would say that's kind of more the minority these days as compared to 10, 15 years ago.
I'd say that's pretty accurate.
Because I would say nobody in that group that I first met had a super sport other than a guy who had a Ducati Super Sport, which isn't actually
The model
a super sport.
yeah.
Yes.
And Travis, how did you experience it coming in?
I really didn't have an experience. I started a little bit differently, I think, than Nick did, because you found people through the internet, right? That was your first step, was that you bought a motorcycle and then you searched for people via the internet.
Yeah, I just Googled like motorcycling around Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And the first thing that shows up is Cincinnati Riders,
Yeah.
aptly named.
And so I started shortly after high school. When I got my first bike, I bought it with the intentions to ride with a friend. That was kind of the start. That was where I began the motorcycling venture. But I didn't really have any like vision to find a group of people to ride more with. I really didn't know what to do with a motorcycle, I guess, other than just like, oh yeah, just ride around and go to places and go to a destination, ride to a destination and then do a thing. And like, that was
You're just
kind of
using
how
it
it
as
was
a mode of
introduced to me.
transportation.
Yeah, in a way. And it was, it wasn't really like a curvy road thing, wasn't really a thing for me per se. It wasn't, track days and like racing and stuff like that really wasn't the original vision. And so it was very different because I had no connection on the internet to anybody. I had no groups really that I was interested in riding with or anything. It really never even occurred to me that there would be like, oh, hey, join a club of other people. Because, you know, like that would be something that you would also do if you were into cars. You know, you join like a car
Yeah.
club and you do a thing. And
Like go to Cars and Coffee.
I never was into any of that either. You know, I was never into like a scene where you'd go to a car show and do a thing and like be a part of the whole like group. I was never really a part of any of that kind of stuff growing up. So, I never really had any thought to have a group, to join a group of people and be a part of like a community until, you know, I met you at work and you kind of got me started on the sporty riding thing, and I really latched onto that. And then it was like, oh, well, this is the group of people that I ride with, and you know, we can go ride with them. And then that's when it kind of hit me of like, some is good, more is better, you know. And so it really made sense at that point. It was like, oh, come together with a group of people. So I really don't have experience with any group other than the one we ride in now. That's really the only group I've ever been a part of.
So I think whenever I do anything, I think I'm always seeking out like-minded folks. When I was into cars, I was always seeking out like-minded folks. And back in those days, you know, you're talking like turn of the millennia, and
The Stone Age.
yeah, pretty much
1942.
before cell phones, and largely before, like, I mean, even internet wasn't what it was or what it is now. The only places on the internet that really existed for car culture back then was forums were just starting. That was like becoming a thing. And before forums was chat rooms. So you had like,
AIM.
well, there was AIM, and AOL chat rooms were okay, but for cars, it was Yahoo Chat. Yahoo Chat / cars. And
Yep.
it was like, that was like the spot.
Because wasn't it Yahoo groups came before forums?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like where the forum evolved from. Forums really started to grab foothold in like the mid-late 90s, but by the early 2000s, forums were dominating before social medias took over.
It was a different time back then too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, you know, the only access you had to the internet was via a desktop computer or a laptop computer that had to be
You were tethered
attached
to a wall.
wall.
Yeah.
Dialed
So,
up.
if you were on the forum, you weren't anywhere else other than in front of your computer at your house or, you know, somewhere else.
To GPS, you had to print it off a map.
Yeah,
MapQuest.
Oh, I
Quest.
remember that.
So that's how you had to get
Yeah.
your directions. You printed it off MapQuest.
So it was like the flow of information was very slow because it was like, oh, people would get on, you'd talk on forums or you'd post information or pictures or whatever's going on. But it was at like spurts at a time, usually in the afternoon or evenings, because people would go do something and then they'd go post it. And it wasn't as like today where you just whip out your phone and you can post instantly, or you can type while
Yep.
you're sitting in, you know,
People
anywhere.
literally text while riding motorcycles.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was coming up through those times, so I was always trying to find folks, like-minded folks, and I figured out how to do it because back then I was into cars. I wasn't in a position to afford and ride motorcycles, and I had a car. You know, it was back when I was one of those Honda kids with a fart can. So I'd go and try to meet other Honda kids with fart cans, and it was a lot of fun. I had a ton of fun, but I knew how to reach out to how to reach out to folks. So when I got into motorcycles, it was kind of similar. When I got into street bikes, I wanted to find other folks to ride with because I wanted to know where to ride. I knew when I got into motorcycles that I wanted to ride sport bikes, and I wanted to ride them in sporting fashions. I wanted to go fast around corners, and I needed to find those roads. And I knew they had to exist. I just didn't know where the hell to go.
See, and I don't know if I even had that vision when I got my motorcycle of like that was what I wanted to do. I think initially I thought since I'm just live by myself, it would be an efficient mode of transportation. But then also not having a commute, don't really have a place to go like on a regular basis.
So real quick sidebar here. How efficient is motorcycling as a mode of transportation?
Very.
I find it extremely inefficient.
Well, it depends if you're going out for efficiency or not. I
Yeah,
mean, like
you have to define
yeah.
what by. I mean, fuel efficient. Yes, it is more fuel efficient, but
I
like
scooted
what other
to the
efficiencies?
Aldi today,
like,
and I
are we
put my
talking
bag of
about?
groceries in the top box. I probably used like what, a 16th of a gallon of gas.
So when I say efficient, um, I wear a helmet, and even if you didn't, your hair would be a mess wherever you go. You're wearing motorcycle clothes instead of
So you can look cool.
instead of regular casual clothes, unless you're one of those folks who doesn't ride with gear on. And even in that case, you can't wear like nice clothes. It's hard to carry stuff with you. Certain bikes it's okay, but most bikes it's hard to carry stuff with you. It's hard to carry passengers. It always, I know motorcycles, like it feels like you're getting places faster, but if you actually time yourself,
Oh, it's slow. It's slower.
because you have to put on all
Yeah.
the gear and you have to take off all the gear. There's just a lot more effort involved in a motorcycle. So I find it inefficient from that angle. But anyways, I just want to touch on that. Back to the main topic here.
Well, like I bought a sport bike, but really didn't know that I wanted to shred twisties.
You hadn't found that yet. I would say what I want to know though is when you were coming in, what were your stereotypes as to what type of folks were out there in the world of motorcycling? Like what caricatures, what stereotypes did you think existed?
So, when I worked at Honda back in the day, the people that I worked with, the older folks in that office, they were the Goldwing bros. And they were very, like we had this one guy, he would go on shutdown and be like, oh yeah, I rode 6,000 miles in like a week. And about once a year, he'd come in like looking like he went through some sort of a washing machine with stitches on his face. It's like, oh, Paul, you had to lay her down. Yeah.
That's terrible.
So I experienced, and that's kind of something I wanted to touch on as well. If I would have gotten into motorcycling when I worked at Honda, I don't know if it would have ended the same way as I am today, just because the people that you're around.
Yeah, people you're around are definitely influence you.
So I knew that there was that kind of subset of the old people on Gold Wings. And then, of course, there's the Harley folks. I really didn't know too much about the crotch rocket riders, other than, dank woolies, nooners. Had no idea what a naked bike was, so I guess those don't really have a stereotype.
I feel like a lot of folks who are outside of motorcycling, like normal folks, they know of two different motorcycles, Harleys and crotch rockets. Those are the only two
Yes.
motorcycles that exist.
Absolutely.
Even though when you get into motorcycling, at least when you get heavily into it, there's so many bike categories, it's insane.
Well, because then you see something like this and you're like, well, what's that?
Yeah, it's like this weird, it doesn't have fairings, but it doesn't have forward controls. So it's not a Harley, it's not a crotch rocket. What is it?
Yep.
Uh,
I was going to say, you have none of the stereotypes around us right now.
Travis, when you were coming in, what type of folks did you know existed in the motorcycling space?
Basically the two groups that you would expect, Harleys and crotch rockets. And most people I knew were Harley people. I feel like that's probably at least, 15 years ago. That was a little more prevalent in the people I know, and I think kind of just the area in general. There was just a lot more of that going on, especially since I think, the Harley people and the cruiser people, that kind of rider, they ride around all the roads everywhere, just in the cities, in the towns, wherever. Whereas I think the crotch rocket people, they have areas that they are in, and they kind of stick to those areas. Like you got Coleraine Avenue, where everybody's doing wheelies up and down Coleraine, but you'll never see any of those people anywhere else. Like, they're not going to drive down your neighborhood street, you know. So I think you end up exposed more to those people, and so people are more familiar with that. Plus, it's all in Hollywood and all that kind of stuff. I think a lot more than usual. When you like watch a European film, or you look at something where like the film takes place in Europe, or something like Fast and the Furious, or like one of the John Wick movies or something, you know, where like the bad guy is riding, you know, some whatever crotch rocket kind of thing, but like they don't emphasize the bike, they just emphasize like the
He's riding a motorcycle.
unfamiliarity.
Yeah.
And he's like dressed in all black with a whole black get-up suit on, and he just looks like a bad dude. But
and he's very NPC, like
yeah, you know, he's not a person.
he's a goon, he's a henchman.
Yeah, and but you don't really ever have any like, unless you know somebody that does that, you don't really just have random experiences with those people.
And see,
No.
when I was dealing with like stereotypes, thinking about stereotypes in motorcycling, for all the shit I'd love to talk about Yami Noob, one thing he is just excellent at is making those stupid, like the 9 type of riders you'll meet videos.
I was wondering how long we would go until that was mentioned.
And dude, like the dude's on point. His original, like his first video that really blew up was like, I forget, the 9 type of riders you'll meet. And it was really funny. Like, and it was pretty dang accurate too. And he's talking about like Busa boys, and he's talking about supermoto riders,
Turbo Hayabusa.
yeah, just and he genuinely had some really good cracks and really good jokes in there. So that was a lot of fun, and I think he touched on he broke down more than just the 2 groups of Harley and Crotch Rocket. He broke it down even more so than that, which was pretty refreshing. I think everybody knows when you say like Harley rider, like what we're talking about here, but to define it a little bit more, your typical like wears chaps, has the cut on, which is like the leather vest. Maybe he's not patched in, he's not part of a motorcycle club.
Are they
necessarily,
chaps or are they assless pants?
All chaps are assless. It's redundant to say assless.
But so we would call chaps assless pants.
Yeah, and you'd call chaps with an ass pants.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So
Are they ass full pants?
that's all pants, hopefully. So you know, you pretty much can picture, you know, wearing bandanas and stuff, no gear on, just an obnoxiously loud motorcycle,
Tassels,
like
fringe,
all that stuff, you know, tons of leather and stuff like that. Yeah, so you know, you pick up on
non-protective leather.
pick up on the stereotype that we're throwing down here, but when you say sport bike bro, crotch rockets, 2 people come to mind for me.
There's the shorts and flip-flops.
Shorts and flip-flops guy, which hilariously enough, Yami Noob, while I just mentioned him, he will constantly use a photo in a lot of his videos, a ton of his videos, when he's making fun of squids. He'll use a photo, it's of a guy on a Gixxer, it's like a yellow Gixxer, and the guy's wearing a t-shirt, shorts, and flip-flops. And what's hilarious about that photo, and it happens to be taken in Florida. The reason I know so much about this photo is it's Brandon Schweitzer on the Yami Noob video. And Yami Noob has no idea who Brandon Schweitzer is, but he's a Cincinnati former AMA pro road racer.
Mm.
So the fact that he's using him as a squid is hilarious because Brandon Schweitzer is the one who like started Asphalt Junkies and is like huge proponent of wearing your gear, but he got caught in that picture, like, and this is like back in like 2007 2008 when he was caught in that picture. They happened to be in Florida goofing off, and he was just like, they were like riding to dinner from the hotel, and so he just wore, you know, his Florida get up while he was going to dinner real quick. And somebody just goofing off took the picture. And the reason he's smiling in the picture is because he's not wearing gear. He's laughing at himself because he knows he looks like an idiot. So that's what's hilarious is Yemi Noob uses Brandon Schweitzer's picture as like a poster of what a squid is.
And the guy's
he's-
actually not a squid.
and that guy's like a legend in motorcycling. Like he's an AMA pro road racer that was successful in road racing. So I always thought that was, I always wanted to like let Yami Noob know that because I think it would be really funny. But anyways, you have that rider, you know, your flip flops, shorts, t-shirt kind of rider, no gear, just being obnoxious, revving and doing all that kind of stuff. Then you have the Power Ranger, which to define that, you know, they're wearing a full race leather suit, one piece, all the padding, the special boots, the special gloves, the helmet. They have all the stuff on, and they're riding around. And when you make fun of those guys, usually it's like you call them like street Rossies or Power Rangers or things. There's a lot of derogatory terms you can use towards those folks. Did you guys have any other stereotypes like that at all towards anyone?
Not really. I really didn't like have much exposure, honestly, to like all of the motorcycling types when I was growing up. My family wasn't really into motorcycling. Nobody in my family was a motorcyclist. We knew people that were, but like we have plenty of friends in like the Iron Horsemen and stuff like that. So like that's what we were more exposed to than anything. I don't know, honestly, that I ever even met someone in leathers ever up until us.
It's a rare breed for sure.
I mean, I've seen the squid guys around and stuff like that on the Gixxers. You know, you go up to Coleraine to go to the steakhouse and eat or whatever, and you can see them going up and down the road. But that's the only exposure I ever had to it, and I never really was ever interested in that. But I never really hated it, per se, other than when they did dumb shit around me when I was trying to drive. You know, obviously get mad at that kind of stuff. But I also never really hated the Harley guys until after I started riding. That's when, like, all the hatred happened, I guess.
So
I don't want to say that it's hatred per se, but
annoyance. I would say it's more
there's some annoyance, and then, you know, I know plenty of guys that ride
the South
cruisers
Park,
that are not a part of this hatred.
the South Park episode where they do they do the jokes on the Harleys.
Oh, man.
that landed pretty well. So
Yeah.
I've always enjoyed that one, and it.
Yeah, that's a classic for sure.
I know it's a stereotype, and I know they're just being silly, but like, it's not far off the mark.
It's so true. Stereotypes wouldn't exist if they weren't true.
Like, if there wasn't an ounce of truth in them.
Well, now, I didn't meet any Power Rangers until I met you people.
Yeah, and like I said, Power Rangers are like a rare breed around these parts. But if you go to California and stuff like that, if you're or in ride areas like in the Smoky Mountains, Tail of the Dragon,
Well, you
stuff,
just
you're going to
gotta-
see a lot of those folks.
You just got to go to the right place. I
Yeah.
mean, we'll see Power Rangers every weekend.
Yeah, down
when
at-
we
down at
go, because
Willow.
we go to the right place where all the Power Rangers go.
So, you know, I talked a little bit about when I was coming in and my desire to find other folks that, one, could teach me, and two, just folks with similar interests. Nick, you mentioned when you went to find folks, you just Google searched like Cincinnati motorcycles and you come across Cincinnati riders.
It's
So-
such a millennial thing to do, by the way.
See, I didn't,
that to
I
the
didn't mention it
millennial
this time.
list,
I didn't
yeah.
mention it this time.
We're all millennials, you know,
I'm like the oldest millennial.
and I'm like the youngest.
Pretty close, yeah. Yeah, so you had mentioned that you Google searched and that's how you did it, which honestly, like, that's pretty close to what I did. I
But was it called the Google back then?
absolutely, it's always called the Google. It's also called the internet.
Well, was it Google or was it Yahoo?
Or was
No,
It was Yahoo
It was
then,
Google.
wasn't
Or was
it?
it dog?
It was Google?
Dog pile.
This is 2010 is when this was. So
Pre Bing.
Yeah, pre Bing. No DuckDuckGo's either.
Yeah, PB. Pre-Bing.
There was an Ask Jeeves though.
Oh, that was a classic.
Yeah. Yeah, I would look. So for cars, I would do something similar. I would if I moved to a new area, I would immediately just start Googling around for car forums. I would try to find the local car forum. Cincinnati had 2 car forums that were relevant to the type of cars I was into. We had CSR and CSS, Cincinnati Street Racers and Cincinnati Street Scene was what was the names of them.
Neither of those have the word fart can in the name.
Correct. No fart cans, but they largely attract fart cans.
Okay, so that's where you found your like-minded fart can folks.
Yep, that's where I found the like-minded fart can folks. So I would hang out with those folks. I would also go down to the local car shops. My favorite of which one was called Raceline, and they had a dyno which was like big back then. It was 2003
Oh yeah.
or 4.
Everybody wanted to dyno their
Yeah,
car.
well, and dynos, like, that was a rare thing. They had one of the only dynos in the Midwest. That's how special it was. So they had a dyno, and it was cool since they were one of the only ones in the Midwest at the time. They would get all kinds of really, really cool cars in there. Like, they had a Le Mans car come in because there were just no other dynos in the mid. And here,
Yep.
these are all like, these dudes were like 22, 23 at the time, running a car shop. Their dad kicked in money is how they afforded it, and they bought a dyno, and it was an in-ground dyno, so they had like concrete the thing. I mean, it's like 60 grand to put this thing in back then, which is like just crazy to think of a 23-year-old doing that kind of stuff back then. So they had folks from all over the Midwest bringing them crazy Porsches and stuff, and here I am with my $2,000 Honda or Acura Integra. You know, it was a turd. Anyways, so I'd find those folks. That's the way I would do that. So in motorcycling, I'd kind of use that sort of knowledge to find folks, and I would target finding folks that I was aspiring to be. I wouldn't just go anywhere where there's literally motorcycles, because I could be led into a place where there were Harleys, and I didn't want to do the Harley thing. So I Google searched around, and I found a local forum. Well, I take that back. I was searching around. I found some local forums, but nothing was quite fitting. Like I'd be on there, and the forum would not be busy at all. There'd be like no action. So I was getting a little bit frustrated, and I ran into a friend of a friend who I didn't even know rode, and he found out that I rode, and we were both on sport bikes, and he was like, "Hey, we started talking." And I was like, do you know of any curvy roads around here? And he was like, yeah. He goes, I know of one just down the street if you want to go. I'm glad to show you it. I'm like, cool. So we geared up and headed off, rode that curvy road, and I thought I found the most amazing road on the planet.
What road was it?
East Miami River Road.
Where is that?
You've never ridden it. I'll take you down it, but you've ridden it plenty.
What's left of it.
Yeah.
Is it underwhelming?
It's extremely especially if you've ridden real roads. It's like the straightest road ever.
You'll
I
laugh.
can't wait.
You'll laugh.
And
when
I
you
thought
do
it was
that.
like the gnarliest thing on the planet. Like I thought, I was like, man, this is it. Like, so I'd finally found a curvy road. Well, anyways, after I got through going through that curvy road,
And it was like cocaine.
yeah, it was incredible. It lived up to what I had imagined it would live up to. I wasn't disappointed at all. This gentleman, he had a lot of experience riding curvy roads comparatively to me, and he was, I think he was impressed with my skill level. But to be fair, I wasn't new to motorcycling. I just bought my first street bike, but I had years of dirt biking, and not just around Papaw's farm. I raced dirt bikes. I was pretty accomplished in dirt biking. In fact, when I rode with him, I had just completed the Halloween 100 race on my dirt bike. So I was pretty confident on a street bike. I just had to adapt my riding style. So he was like, he had advised me to seek out the asphalt junkies. He's like, yeah, just find the asphalt junkies and go ride with them. And I was like, cool. So now I had a new set of folks to go find. So I
You went about finding them.
I Google searched them because it was Asphalt Junkies was a forum, and found them. I mentioned Brandon Schweitzer. Brandon Schweitzer started Asphalt Junkies along with Eric Monger. Like those are like the two people that started. That's why their shop's called AFJ Race Shop and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They started that back in 2008 is when they started it. They were once it got rolling in 2010, all the way up to about 2012 was about the peak of Asphalt Junkies. It was the second largest forum in Ohio. The other one was called Ohio Riders, based out of Columbus. And the Asphalt Junkies and Ohio Riders hated each other.
Well, if it was from Columbus, I'm sure it was terrible.
Oh, the Asphalt Junkies hated them. Brandon and Monger went up to Columbus to ride with these guys. Because at first they were trying to be friendly. And they're like, hey, cool, let's go meet these folks up here in Columbus and let's go ride with them. The folks up in Columbus kept bragging about how good their roads were because they had Hawking Hills. So, they were like, all right, let's go ride in Hawking Hills and check out these roads that these guys keep bragging about being so
Hocking
awesome.
Hills is not Columbus, though.
Well, it's
It's not close.
well, Kentucky's not Cincinnati either, so it's like it's kind of there.
Well, I think that Kentucky's closer to Cincinnati than Hocking Hills is to Columbus.
It largely is, but overall, that's their Kentucky, and so they went up there, and dude, when you went and rode with the Ohio Riders, it was a joke. I went and rode with them once. As soon as you get there, they like try to treat it like a track day, where they break you up into groups. The problem, and I'm fine with that, if you let me self-police. But they don't let you self-police. Instead, they're just like, you have never ridden with us, you're going in the back of the novice group. And I'm like, I understand what you guys are doing. I understand it. But you don't know me. I don't know you, but you don't know me. And I liked the way the Asphalt Junkies did things better. So Brandon and Monger went up there, and Brandon is a very, very accomplished, very quick rider. Eric Monger wasn't as quick as he is now, but was still a very solid rider back in those days. And these guys put him in the novice group. And they're like, dude, these are public roads. Like, I can do whatever the fuck I want. Like, this is not... I don't have to go in your group how you tell me to. So immediately they just started acting like punks. Ripping big, nasty wheelies, just doing all the dumb stuff. Because they're like, screw these guys, Like, these guys are a joke. So they acted like jackasses. They got kicked out of the ride. And they're like, you can't kick us out of public roads. So they just kept riding anyways. And it like started fist fights and stuff. That's how these Ohio riders are, man. Like they're like, you're only welcome here if you follow our direct orders. And I'm like, that's not how you should be to your friends, man. Like,
Sounds like a track day at Mid-O.
Like, at a track day's different, right? Like, they can kick you out. It's a private event. But on public roads, you can't tell other people what to do.
I'm going to kick you off of I-75.
So they rode with those folks, and then they came back and started Asphalt Junkies because they were like, screw, we're not going to deal with them. We're going to start our own thing. I'd been an Asphalt Junkie for years, and I finally got up and rode with the Ohio Riders. I went out on my BMW K1200 LT, which was my big BMW. It was like a BMW Goldwing.
Purple.
Big purple.
Big perp.
That was actually maroon.
And I had Jessica on the back. And of course, they're like, you, back a novice. And I was like, okay. And luckily, the guy that they had leading the novice group, he was a lot older. He was an older gentleman, probably in his late 60s. I mean, he was pretty old. He came up to me, and he was being very polite. And he was just being, just wanted to know my skill level, my confidence level, what I felt and everything. And he just politely asked, he goes, hey, how comfortable do you feel? Which I thought was a very appropriate question. And I just looked at him straight up, and I was like, yeah, dude, I'm fine. You don't have to worry about me. And he's like, okay. And so we headed off, and I did not belong in the back of the group. So I worked all the way up to the front of the group right behind the leader. And when we came to the first stop, which was like 60 miles in, these guys were super militant about everything. He asked me, he goes, hey, do you want to like go up to a different group? Would you like to ride faster? And I told him, honestly, dude, I was like, I'm fine. Your pace is fun. I'm on this big bike. Like, I don't need to be going faster than this. I said, I'm perfectly comfortable. Well, then like another person from the intermediate group, they wanted the Ohio Riders wanted to bump them down. Yeah. And, but that would have made the group sizes too uneven. Yeah. And they needed someone from the novice group to bump up to their intermediate group. And I was like, Jesus, like, why are they being like this?
This is complicated.
Oh, yeah.
My brain hurts.
So the ride leader of the novice group was asked who can go up to the intermediate group, and he pointed to me. And the intermediate group leader immediately like wanted like a meeting between all of the other group leaders because he just didn't believe it. Like he just didn't believe it at all.
He didn't believe the power of Big Purple.
Yeah, he didn't believe in the power of Big Purple. And the guy that was the novice leader was like, trust me, he's fine. You can go up into your intermediate group. It won't be a problem. So I go up into the intermediate group. I immediately get pissed off because these guys are riding just idiotic. They're like parking it in corners to drag race straights. And I'm like, God, these guys can't ride. So I started passing them. And I just start getting around them. And I work my way all at front. They yell at me for passing these guys. And I straight up told them, I was like, you guys suck at riding. Like, you're terrible. You need proper leadership, and you need to be instructed on how to do this because you're going to kill yourself. Because I was like, you cannot drag race in the straights on your Hayabusa going 120 to park it going 30 in the corners. We go 60. We do not accelerate. We do not brake. We just maintain 60. If you can do that, then you can step up into the next group. And they didn't want to have that. So I was like, all right, I'm out. I was done with those guys. But yeah, like you find your group. That's the way I did it, was seeking out, using the internet as a tool, meeting other riders, and asking them like, hey, where's the roads at? Where's the fun at? Until I found like the circle of people I wanted to surround myself with, that I was like, yeah, these are the folks I want to ride with. And then that's how I got introduced into track riding and that sort of thing. And it kind of just took off from there. Because I think the first time I got out on track was 2012 or 2013. Can't remember which year. But it was right around there. And I came to it because of the Asphalt Junkies. So we've touched on some basic kind of factions of motorcycling, our Harley people, our sport bike people. Anybody?
How we found our people.
I hope so. Scooter gang for life. What other folks exist out there beyond Harley people and sport bike people? Is there anyone else?
The cafe racer people.
I call them the hipsters.
I support that.
Yeah. They're like septum piercing. They're like wearing flannel. They use grinders.
What do they grind in their grinders?
Well, they have grinders for their marijuana. They have grinders for chopping up their bikes into something that'll never run again.
They have grinders.
You have a table grinder right over there.
Yeah, I got the bench grinder right there, but I'm talking about like a 90 degree angle grinder.
Hell yeah.
They have grinders
Handheld.
that they eat too, right? For sustenance?
Is
Yeah, the
is that a thing?
sandwich.
Yeah, the sandwich.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, it's called a grinder.
I'm like way too old for that. I still call them sandwiches.
Sandwiches.
Yeah, I would say they exist. I feel like, and this is me knowing nothing about them, but other than observing them, because we fancy an establishment that inherently attracts those individuals.
Yes, the Comet.
I think their riding career surrounds the 60 to 100 feet that is entering and exiting that establishment.
Yeah, going from their house in North Side to the bar in North Side, back to their house in North Side.
Which are 200 feet apart.
Yeah.
Because that's all the farther the bike would realistically make it.
Because in Cincinnati, we have shotgun houses, and
Yeah.
yeah, they're very close together.
So I feel like, and I think that's the only instances where like that looks cool or acceptable is like the intro to parking and then the exit from leaving. Because You don't really ever see them outside of that.
No.
And if you do, they just look silly.
And the type of folk, so that other folks get a better picture as well, is that hipster kind of look. Think like curled mustaches,
What about like old hipster?
old hipster. Yeah,
Yeah.
that works
They're,
well.
they're
So
ones too, yeah. for
super
sure.
tight jeans, really weird haircuts. Like
They're
that's-
probably on like a chopped up CBR 500 that doesn't look anything like a CBR 500
yeah,
anymore.
it's whatever they got. It's very chopped up and very hobbled together.
It's definitely carbureted.
But I'll tell you this. I think the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride that happens annually
Well, that's cool. That's
is
like
actually
the,
pretty cool.
That's like the creme de la creme.
Can we go to that?
That's like the
We-
peak of it.
We don't have bikes for it.
I do.
You have to have
I have the
proper-
right one for it.
No, you have to have an old school bike.
Mine's old. My Tiger's plenty old enough.
No, it has to be a retro.
But I have
And
jackets, pants, and loafers.
if you have the correct bike, you can participate. There's another one. The guys from the Comet used to put it on, and it was the Mods versus Rockers rally, and it was like distinguished gentlemen kind of riders on cafe racers, and then it was also punk rockers riding scooters, and they had to be like old Vespas and stuff.
But so you're saying that a 2012 Kimco People 300 GTI is not
acceptable.
distinguished?
No, not acceptable. 100%.
Then I don't know if I want to be anywhere near these people that
So-
won't accept me into my people.
I always enjoyed those things because it was just so silly. Like it was just a fun time. Those guys have a blast when they do it, and it's less about riding and more about just being
People watching.
people, just being goofy and silly. And they all they do is that, like in the Mods versus Rockers rally, they do go out for a little ride. They leave from North Side, they go out for a small loop, and then they come back to North Side, and then they bar hop. And like that's the whole point of the ride. The Distinguished Gentleman's Ride has to do with I forget, like prostate cancer or something. It has to do with like
Yeah, they got a cause behind it.
yeah, they have like a cause thing that they do, but it's like a men's cause that they do. But they all dress real fancy. They dress up in like suits and stuff and go ride their cafe bikes.
Yeah, they go like all out. Like they have the like bomber setups, the old classic, like airplane goggles and
Scarves.
stuff. Oh yeah, scarves. Yeah, they do it all. They do it up.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty neat to see.
So we got like hipsters. Who else?
Power Rangers, hipsters, squids,
Pirates.
pirates.
Old people.
Oh, we got Sport Tour Dad.
Oh yeah, the dads.
He's on his Interceptor 1200.
High vis everything.
But
Or his
that's
Blackbird.
also
He'll have his Blackbird sometimes.
there's a little
too.
bit of overlap between that and ADV Bro.
There is. So
ADV Bro's new though.
Yeah, I
That
was
didn't
gonna say-
exist 10 years ago when we started.
Oh no.
But
Yeah,
that's definitely a thing now.
that's definitely a thing of the modern era of motorcycling. But what the ADV Bro is the replacement for the Sport Tour Dad.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sport Tour Dads have like kind of faded off.
Because
There's
they
not-
want to be more adventurous.
Well, they're
It's coming back though.
that's like the what do you call it? They're not their midlife crisis.
Yeah.
ADV Bros are midlife crisis dads that wanted motorcycles. So
so-
they turned to ADV.
Sport touring was real big, like 90s, 2000s, and then kind of started dying off in the 2010s. And that's when ADV started kicking up. So when you say midlife crises, the dudes that were midlife crisis in the 90s and 2000s are now way old and probably out of motorcycling. And the dudes that are midlife crisising now, like yours truly, that's ADV Bros.
Yeah.
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 But it generally speaking, it is a gentleman of dad age, so 30s to 50s, and they're very dorky. They've never ridden before. They just midlife crisis. They got a wild hair, and
They
were
got
like,
plenty of
I'm
money.
going to buy a motorcycle.
some of them don't have hair.
And since they have too much ego, they can't start off on something appropriate for a beginner. They have to go buy the biggest and baddest thing on the planet, whatever that is to them. 1,200, 1,300, 1,400, 1,000 million cc's. And that's what they're going to ride off-road for the first time ever. It's this 600
Yeah, they probably
pound
also
machine.
had a childhood stint where they maybe had a dirt bike. Their dad had a dirt bike for them, and so they did a little bit of like dirt bike riding around their house
And
when
therefore,
they grew
that
up.
counts.
And so that's where they got the idea of that
I
they
don't need
want
a
an
beginner
ADV.
bike because I had one for 3 minutes when I was 12.
30 years ago.
Yep.
Yeah, there's ADV dads, Sport Tour dads, kind of the same person.
They're the new age. I think it's turning back though, honestly, since the market has kind of changed now, and we're now getting these. What do you call them? The
Lightweights.
crossovers.
Oh, crossovers is a sport. It's a new age sport tour, and it's
Yeah.
all those folks that we were talking about with the ADVs. They went out and bought these things and then never off-roaded them. There were so many folks like that. They were just
Yeah.
never off-roading those bikes. And the problem with an ADV bike ride is the compromise. The compromise is the more and more dirt performance you have, the less and less street bike performance you have. So all these guys that bought these things and then literally never took them in the dirt, they were just hurting the way that they use the bike, which is all street.
So, did you ever take your 1290 in the dirt?
Yeah,
How often?
not very. And when I bought the bike, I knew it was going to be that way.
Mm.
But I
You also didn't buy the off-road version.
I did
too,
not. I bought
to
the
preface
S
that.
model.
You
S
bought
model
the
is S model.
So
So mine was more street oriented. I would have to say mine's like at best.
I mean, like, did you ever do the sole on it?
Yeah.
Hmm?
I did, 80% road, 20% off road is probably what I would say the bike was designed for. And I used it like
95, 5,
98
98.
2. So I did off road it, but just we would like if we saw some Forest Service road or something like that while we're in the mountains, I would dip off and just check out where the road went. But it wasn't like hardcore off road riding. If I wanted to hardcore off road ride, I'd grab a proper dirt bike or enduro. My background's
scooter.
that, or scooter. My background's that, so I never dabbled in the ADV for off road riding because I was always like, well, they make bikes for that, so I'll just use
Because
one
if
of
you
those.
wanted to go off road, I could be completely wrong because I'm an idiot. You wouldn't take a 1290 because it's huge.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. Is
yeah, tell all
Or
the
like
ADV
a
people
like a
that are-
BMW GS. Why would you take that off road?
so.
It's huge.
Well, the problem that I have with that whole industry is they sell these things as if they're the ultimate off road machine, and you look at all the brochures and you
It's
see
literally
one,
in KTM sales
like
literature.
you're going to see one launching off of some sand dune in the Sahara, clearing a 150-foot gap. You know, no one's doing that with these things. Most of us are just cruising around at 35 miles an hour, and then we see a gravel parking lot, and we're like, "There's our off road," you know. So it's not like some major off road machine for most folks. Most folks use them as touring bikes. And for that purpose, they're actually great. They're really, really good. They handle sporty, like they're actually pretty fun. They tour well. They pack mule like crazy. You can just pack all kinds of crap on them. What's nice about them being somewhat off-roady is they're tough as nails. So if you drop one, they tend to hold up well to that.
Yep.
So there's a lot of like positives to the adventure bike, but it isn't necessarily like what the sales brochures try to sell you. And what there is in the industry is there's a huge shift away from the 1200 class adventure bikes. People were getting into the 800 class or middleweight adventure bikes. Now they're not even into those. Now they're all into like the 400 class of adventure bikes, the lightweights.
You mean a dirt bike?
And pretty soon here, they'll finally buy a dirt bike. And I'm like, they did it all so I was 23 years old. I was approximately the same size I am now. I'm 6'2", and my first motorcycle I ever rode that I bought at 23 was a child's dirt bike called a Yamaha PW80. That's starting on a proper small bike. Now, I don't say everybody should start on a child's motorcycle, but start on something small and reasonable that you can manage and you can crash and do all that sort of thing.
I picked something very small and very reasonable.
You did not. But at least you're on a scooter now.
Yeah.
So
A pretty powerful, beefy scooter at that.
now that we've laid out a few different generics of macro view, the type of riders you'll meet as you come into motorcycling, we can talk more focused here in Cincinnati.
Is this my opportunity?
Yes, get in there.
Bike life. So, I remember very early on, I would get these like suggestions on Facebook, and it was Bike Life X. And honestly, I had no idea it was like a group of people that ride motorcycles. I just thought it was an apparel brand.
Well, it is kind of.
Exactly. So I thought that more so than, oh, this is a group of people local to Cincinnati that rides bikes. So then once I figured that out, I was very curious. So I was like, what is this all about? Then you get in there and you look at the posts and the people and the bikes and you think, oh, this is interesting. And I will tell you, I definitely did a drive-by of the Clifton Shell.
Oh, did you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I ended up at that Clifton Shell one night. I didn't know Bike Life back then. I saw Chris Cobb and a few of the other junkies. They were talking about going out and riding at night. And Mello was riding, Chris Cobb, Stevie B. There was quite a few guys that I know well and have ridden with plenty, and I love riding with. And they were talking about riding at night. And I was like, well, that sounds extra sketchy.
Why do people choose to do that?
And I was like, I don't necessarily condone going fast around curvy roads at night, but I'm interested. So let's see how this goes. So I meet up with them. We did not go to the curvy roads. We went to downtown Cincinnati. And we linked up with a whole big group of folks that I had never met before. And we started just like basically riding as fast as we possibly could from one red light to the next.
Did they have their big booty hose with riding goggles?
Oh yeah, there was all kinds of like dirt bike goggles on the sides of their heads. And I was like, what is happening right now? The only thing I knew was me, Chris Cobb, Stevie B, and Mello. It wasn't even close. We were the best riders there. It was like ridiculous. I could tell a lot of these folks weren't super strong riders. And so Stevie B and Chris Cobb being the hooligans they're just wheeling everywhere. So I start joining in and wheeling everywhere.
And they probably loved it.
I didn't stick around to find out. I rode with them collectively for about an hour, and I was over it because I was like, dude, I don't like stopping at stoplights. Like, this isn't fun. So I left. I was like, all right, man, I'll see you guys later. And then I rolled out. But that was my first encounter with the Bike Life folks.
But I think they're all very nice people.
You know, I love to jest and make fun, but I really like, if any of them had ever heard this podcast, I really don't want them to take offense, because honestly, some of the folks that I met there have been rough. Some of the folks that I've met there have been well off. But for the most part, I would say the folks that I've met there have been good people.
Oh, yeah, I would totally agree with you.
So I will jest and I will make fun because, you know, they don't ride the way that I ride. They like to hang out in the Shell parking lot and do that whole thing where they parking lot pimp and
What about
stuff.
highway takeover?
Yeah, they do the takeovers, which we didn't even touch on that that side of motorcycling. They're the folks who do the takeovers. They do the big stunt rides in Cincinnati.
They're the ones that had that viral video of the Amazon truck bus that like just mowed through them on the highway.
I forgot about that.
I think that went like national.
It did. I saw the clip on MotoStars on YouTube. That's MotoStars is that channel that all he does is plays like crash videos.
And he has the very distinctive voice.
Yeah, it's some foreign voice, but
What's the saying? He with more lug nuts wins, right?
yeah, exactly. So stupid game, stupid prizes, sort of thing for the Bike Life folks on that day. But I was out on a ride with them for Halloween, and of course they all show up wearing Halloween costumes, and the girls are all booty clapping and doing all
Hell
that,
yeah.
doing all that stuff.
Hell yeah.
It's a little wild for me, but like I said, everybody was super nice. Everybody was stoked that you were there. Like everybody was like really happy to meet you. It was a very safe event. And what I like about Bike Life, one thing I really do like about Bike Life is even though you come from a different background, a different culture, because these are a lot of like inner city type of folks, and some of them are pretty rough, and they're like extremely welcoming, and I feel very safe with them.
Yeah, I mean, I would have no hesitation going by myself, knowing nobody, to like a Bike Life event, and I feel like you could have a great time.
Oh, absolutely. Like I'd feel safe leaving my key in my bike and everything. Like they're all super, super cool people. So I've got nothing against them as far as people go, but I'll pick on them for not wearing gear and being overall being hooligans and
Yes.
that sort of stuff. It's pretty hilarious, pretty comical whenever I go to one of their events. Have you had any run-ins with the Bike Life?
Just the one I have to deal with all the time.
Who's that?
Mr. Johnny Westside.
Johnny
Oh
Westside.
yeah, Johnny Westside.
I guess he's ex Bike Life now, I guess maybe. Who want to
He's
say that?
deep down, he
He's
still loves
retired.
it.
Well, you can take him out of the crew, but can you take the crew out of him?
You can take the hoe off the streets, but you can't take the streets out the hoe.
There you go.
I tell you, one of the most fun interactions I ever had with Bike Life was I left work at Meyer, and what's that road if you go out the back way?
Oh, you take Hopple across and then you go down.
The Banks, or is it what?
No, it starts with a B though.
But
Blue.
I
anyway,
don't know. I take it
Blue.
every day. It goes all the way down.
It is through the hood, like
Blue Ridge
yeah.
Parkway.
No, it's through. It
Couple
is,
states off.
it's through the hood, man. Like it is rough down there, and I took off, leaving Meyer. I cut down that road, and I'm on my Versus, my Versus with all three cases on it, wearing full Adventure Dad gear, just looking so dorky, which is my favorite way to ride. And here comes the Bike Life crew. They're headed the opposite way of me. So I'm looking at them. They're looking at me. I'm solo. They got a pack of 20 plus
Clapped out Gixxer 600s that
Oh,
are
no.
stretched.
dirt bikes and quads.
Hell yeah.
And the quads, both the quads that I could see, were on their back wheels with the riders standing up
Well, of course.
while riding the quad. And I'm approaching them. They're approaching me. I can see them all, hooting and hollering and getting all rowdy and everything. So instinctually, what I do is I snap the clutch and just big, nasty, fat wheelie with all three cases on the back. And as soon as I did it, the entire group just lost their shit.
Well, as they should.
They were going nuts when I did that because they just didn't expect Sport Tour Dad to just do a big, fat, nasty wheelie. So that one kind of boosted me up a bit, and I was pretty hyped after that. Like it was hilarious. So I really enjoyed that.
This summer, can we teach me how to wheelie?
Yeah, why not?
Because I want to have that encounter, but I want to do a wheelie on my scooter.
Scooters are a bit tough.
I think I have enough goose to do it on the scoot.
You probably can. I'd say so.
I may have almost done it
You
unintentionally.
can wheelie
one
them
day.
things, and they've got even less horsepower. You got a clutch with those though. Not having a clutch makes it tough.
Grom Kana.
Yeah, you can practice your wheelies there on the Benelli. You can practice them on the XR100 that I got over there. That's another good bike to practice them
Ooh,
on.
yeah, that is a good bike to do that on.
And then we can move you up from there. You have to get the confidence, the motions, the controls. You have to get all that down. Once you get all that down, it all applies regardless of what bike you're on. So it's not that bad.
These are real slow speed, so it's easy to if
And
it doesn't go well.
I don't have any slow
less
speed wheeling
destructive.
creatures in my garage.
the XR100 we can do in the yard. I mean, both of them we can do in the yard, but what I like about the XR100 is it crashes way better. The Benelli doesn't.
It has more
crash as
plastic.
well.
Yeah. At least
The
it was pre-crashed.
XR is lighter
though.
too, so it's going to be easier to do.
Yeah. So, bike life. Have you haven't had any other run-ins with them besides Johnny Westside?
Not really. I stay away from that area just because it's difficult for me to drive in those areas. It's not so bad now, but like if I'm getting on a motorcycle, I'm going to go somewhere
Yeah.
to ride or do something, and just those areas are not where I'm tempted to go.
City riding is just not what we
No.
desire
Well,
to do.
I prefer to not stop as much as possible because stopping is more
Annoying.
difficult for me than you guys. Because
Well,
I only
that's
can do
because,
one
you know,
foot, and then I gotta hold the
you're-
clutch in the whole time. So it's just
It's because you shrunk.
I have to prepare to stop. Let's put it that way.
You have to pick and choose your stops.
I have to pick where I'm gonna stop, where I'm gonna put the bike. Is it rutted? Can I get my foot down there? Which foot am I using? Is it on a hill?
there's a lot more to consider.
This sounds
Yes.
very logistically difficult.
So I just don't stop if I don't have to, which means that I don't go to places that are populated with stoplights.
What other sides of the motorcycle scene here in Cincinnati? We haven't touched on. We kind of touched on Comet, but bike night. So even bike nights can be different.
Well, we went to Quaker State one.
Which that was
That was my only time I've
one
been
and
to-
only.
Is it Quaker Steak?
Yes.
Yep.
Quaker Steak and Lube.
Yes. So Quaker Steak and Lube. In case anyone doesn't know what it is, it's a restaurant, and
Wing
Kind of like a
joint.
Steak and Shake, in my opinion.
it's very
It's
shitty.
like a wing joint, yeah.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like wings and stuff, but very very shitty restaurant, a typical choke and puke style, box chain place, and their shtick is they'll host they'll usually one night a week. That particular location will host a car event where they'll have like a cruise in for cars, and typically you see like muscle cars to older cars like 70s, 60s, 50s cars, and the folks that go along with those, which are typically like tuck their t-shirt in their jeans, they wear white New Balances, and
Corvette.
yeah, they're very, very much that guy. That's what typically shows up there. Then on another night on the week, that same location will host a bike night, and what you typically get at that bike night is a very large representation of the current Harley market. So I would say, percentage-wise, in that parking lot is at least 80% Harley Davidson. And of those Harley Davidson, I would say at least 80% of those are brand new ones. So the type of rider that would ride brand new Harley Davidsons is what you see there.
Because we went barb shopping.
Yeah, you can go barb shopping at the Quaker Steak and Lube. Then there's the Comet.
There was a barb for every flavor.
There's the Comet Bike Night, which is the hipsters,
Oh yes,
which we enjoy.
we are the hipsters.
Well, what I've always personally enjoyed about the Comet, I mean, there's the typical Comet guys that go, those old guys that always show up there, but there's always weird bikes there, and I like weird bikes. So that's why I've always liked the Comet, is because it's small, it's intimate, and there's weird bikes. So it's
Yeah.
my kind of place.
Yeah, the bike choices, more of our flavors. There's a lot of bikes that we ride that ride there, and then all the weird stuff, old stuff. There's some cruiser stuff that shows up, but it's not a ton. But
Rarely ever is there a bagger.
Yeah, rarely.
yeah, you
Usually
get a
they come and
couple.
go too.
Yeah, you get a couple here and there. None of them are regulars, so they're
Well,
just like
Matt-
showing up because they heard about it or seen it or driving
Matt
by.
with that M1000 single R,
yeah,
He has a green CVO.
he had no, his is a Road King special. His isn't a CVO though.
I don't know the difference.
CVO is the fancy one. It's like having an M1000 instead of a S1000.
Mm.
But he rides a bagger, and He's normal up there. He's a regular up there.
Yeah.
But I've never
it's-
seen him ride the bagger there.
It's definitely less common at the Comet to see Harleys there. And if you do, they're typically like 70s Harleys that are chopped out and all dumb and stuff, like jockey shift and everything. So that's more typical of the Comet.
But they also have the dirt bike bros that roll up.
Yeah, and the supermoto guys.
Yeah.
Cincinnati Supermoto shows up, and they'll usually come in about 8 or 9 o'clock, wheelies and burnouts, and they're there for like 15 minutes and then they leave.
Well, they can't stick around for much longer than that.
Yeah, because the cops are coming for sure. So we got Comet Bike Night, Quaker Steak Bike Night. Asphalt Junkies used to host a bike night, which was just an Asphalt Junkies reunion we did every week.
There's Bike Life Bike Night.
There's Bike Life Bike
Multiple
Night.
different flavors for each day of the week that you want.
But I've never attended a Bike Life Bike Night.
I haven't either.
I would like to.
Should we go?
I think we should. We should make it. We should fucking let's cast from there. that would be dope.
Well, I think they might have a podcast.
I don't care. It's public
Well, yeah.
streets.
Well,
What are
I
they going to
know.
do? Tell us to shut down?
No, we should interview them to be on our cast.
Exactly.
Might need a media license.
As long as we do it on the sidewalk, I think we're cool.
Could do interviews.
So the Bike Life folks do their their bike nights. And who else does a bike night in the city? You'll have these like random small ones.
There used to be one out in Newtown by where I am.
Yeah, the
The
Euro Bike Night.
Urban Grill or something like
Yeah,
that.
that was the Euro Bike Night, is what that one was.
So you're saying that would have been a good one?
That's on like the last Thursday of every month. It's
Do they still do it?
yeah, but it's all Comet people and it's
Oh.
very small.
Just Comet 2.0. Comet on the east side.
Yeah, Comet on the east
Mm-hmm.
side, and it's like it's small. There's no food. You're just out in a parking lot hanging out.
Boo.
Yeah, there's no drinks, no food unless you bring it. But there are some folks that show up there that don't necessarily go to the Comet because they're from Far East,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll
From the Far East.
yeah they'll show up with some bikes that are pretty dang cool. Like I've seen some pretty slick bikes at Euro Bike Night before, so it's worth a go if you're reasonably close, and if Euro bikes are your thing, that's worth going to. And then there's it's not bike focused, but there's Cars and Coffee on the Saturday mornings.
Oh, yeah, I've been there many times
I
with cars and bikes.
I generally can't stand Cars and Coffee because I really don't like car people.
They're a bit pretentious. If you go, like, I've been once or twice, and they're like kind of stuck up about it. Especially if you show up on a bike, they like don't even want to look at you.
Yeah, and
Like
and,
you're some pleb and they're a king, you know.
and what's wild to me is like 20 some odd years ago, 20 plus years ago, car scene. You never saw a damn Lamborghini or a Ferrari or
Oh, well,
crap like
that type of Cars and Coffee, that's like in Crestview, and like I don't subscribe to that at all.
Well,
the
even
the
the
one
one-
by my house, Tobogo, usually, if they're gonna be supercars, they show up early. But then now they started doing one at Element, which is out by MedPace, and that's where like they have like the roped off area where the people with the supercars can park in there. So I want to go to the new branded Tobogo and see what it's like now. But usually when it's people with like the old Euro cars, I would say almost like the Comet of cars, it's pretty cool.
So and that, I like that, but I don't know when. Like you watch YouTube, if you've ever seen Instagram, it seems like everybody's got a damn supercar now, and I'm like, who is affording $400,000 cars? Like this is insane. Back 20 some years ago, you never saw a dude ride even a Porsche. Like Porsches were super rare. You just didn't see that stuff, and if you did see one, it was like a turd Porsche that no one cares about, like a Boxster or something. And it was always like some dentist driving it or something. But it wasn't a car person driving it. Hell, back then in 2002, my dad had a Boxster. And he's very much not a car person. He thought it was a cool car, and he bought it and he owned it for like 2 years and then he sold it. So I've always wondered, like, where in the world all that comes from? Because I'm like, because you never see him out driving. You only ever see him at Cars and Coffee. I rarely ever see one out driving.
Sometimes. I mean, I see a lot of exotic stuff in my gym parking lot.
Do you?
Yeah.
And I just don't know where it all comes from. I'm like, who's affording? And 20 some years ago, you'd go to we used to have, in fact, you can probably find it on YouTube still. Cincinnati had one of the biggest cruise-ins in the entire country. It happened at the old Dave & Buster's parking lot. And it would happen on, God, it's been so long. I think it was Thursday nights. I'm pretty sure it was Thursday nights. We would all roll up. This is back when I was into cars, when I had a car club. We'd roll up on Thursday night to Dave & Buster's.
The Fart Can Car Club.
Yep, Fart Can Car Club. Car club's name, oh, you're going to love it. It was Altered Impact. Oh, yeah. AI.
Altered, how did you spell that?
Like it sounds.
Okay.
Yeah, there wasn't any weird spelling there.
That is like so 2000s.
Yeah, the Ultimate Car Club, for me, back in those days, they were like a year or two older than me in high school. And their car club name, they were the guys that started the shop I talked about with the dyno. The shop was called Raceline, but their car club was called Barely Legal. Oh, the guys they were the coolest dudes on the planet, man. God, they had the cool cars. And what I mean by cool cars is they had like a Honda Civic with a motor swap. That was like the cool car.
Did it have the sticker on the front windshield that said locally hated?
No, that was mostly like mini trucks that did that.
Well,
Okay.
It probably had a body kit that was finished.
Oh,
It wasn't just the primer or raw
no,
still.
Most of them were still primer. Yeah, they were primered.
you mean they were Nardo gray?
They weren't glossed over. They were still flat.
Freshly wet sanded.
Shit, the guy who started one of the guys that started Raceline, there were two of them. Rick was his name. Rick Williams. He owns a shop still. It's called Rick's Automotive. RIX Automotive. Rick's Automotive. And so if you want Honda service, like good, genuine Honda service, not performance upgrades, just normal service, Rick's Automotive, he's a good dude. He's excellent working on cars, and you want to hit that button on my light, on my bazooka light. He's excellent at it. It's down on the handle. Yep. One more time. There you go. He's really good at working on cars, and Mark Obermeyer works there, and he's really good at working on cars. Mark Obermeyer and I went to the same college together for automotive technology, so and they've been around that thing for a while. Anywho, Rick Williams back in the day had this Honda Civic that had a turbocharger on it. Oh man, and he painted it copper colored, and everybody called it the Copper Coupe. And it was like, to me anyways, it was the fastest car on the planet. And he would drag race anything right now. He did not care. If you wanted to bring $5,000 laid on the table, he'd drag race you. He didn't care what it was. And I remember we were at Dave & Buster's, and this rich dude who's funny, I don't know the full story, but he had a Vector. If you remember the car company Vector, because he had partial ownership in the company, and he lived here in Cincinnati. So he rolled up, and when he rolled up, he would have multiple people with him, and they would all drive his cars. He rolled up in a Lamborghini Diablo, is what he rolled up in. So this thing, like as soon as it pulled into the parking lot, huge crowd came drawing around it. And then his Vector came in. He had a Vector, the V12 version, not the W8 version. He had the V12 version, which was super cool. It had like a Lamborghini V12 in it. And this thing was bright yellow, and the doors didn't open Lamborghini style. They opened up like McLaren style. And the dude driving it had the doors open while he was rolling through the parking lot. It was cool as hell. And then he had a Dodge Viper, and his Dodge Viper came rolling in, and it was painted chameleon colored. But the Dodge Viper, what was cool about it was an actual track car. So it was like Had like HRE wheels on it, big fat nasty track rubbers on it. You could tell it was completely set up for racetrack. Had a big time suspension on it, huge wing on the back. Like it was very much a race car, and had roll cage inside. It was cool. He rolled up, and I remember this one guy, Massey, Derek Massey. He was in Super Street magazine. They had this contest every year, the Super Street. They called like the Street Car of the Year or something like that. Anyways, they would take in contestants. They'd take like 10 contestants who built cars from all over the country, and then they would test their cars like road and track style. Derek Massey got to be on that once. He had an Acura Integra Type R, a yellow one, and he had it supercharged at the time, which was lame. And he had a whole bunch of bolt-on parts, and he thought he had something cool. It handled worse than a stock Integra Type R. It was a little bit faster than an Integra Type R, but not by much.
Well, isn't that the thing about most people who modify cars? They actually just make them worse.
Yep, that's pretty true. Now, a lot of the folks that went in, it's called Streetcar Shootout. That's what it was called, Streetcar Shootout. A lot of the folks that entered the Streetcar Shootout actually knew what they were doing and made up cool cars. Like I remember there was this Supra that somebody had built. This is before Supras were overly expensive. Guy built
Before they were BMWs?
Yeah. And, well, I'm talking about right now you can't buy an MK4 Supra for less than 6 figures. Back then, you were able to get an MK4 Supra for like 20 grand. Guy built an MK4 Supra, and it was like 600 horse, so it was pretty modest on the engine build. But like the suspension, the brakes, like he really built this car, and it performed really well. Anyways, this Lamborghini comes rolling in. Derek Massey rolls up to this dude and immediately is like slapping $2,000 down, like, "I'll race your Lamborghini right now." And the guy in the Lamborghini just looks at him like, "Get out of my way, dude." And he just walks inside Dave and Buster's and goes and eats dinner, you know. He's rich. He doesn't have anything to prove to a guy with an Acura Integra. So, and $2,000 doesn't mean nothing to that guy. So he's like, "Get out of my way, kid." But Rick Williams is sitting there, and Rick Williams goes, "Hey, Derek, I'll race you." And then Derek, "Excuse City," and all that kind of stuff. And back then, Rick's car would have fucking wasted Derek's car. But it was just a funny thing. But that's kind of how car scene was back then. Motorcycle scene here in Cincinnati during the Asphalt Junkies days reminded me a lot of that early car scene in Cincinnati. It was welcoming and inviting, and there wasn't much gatekeeping, but there was a lot of friendly insults thrown around. You know, where you would like, you'd make fun of folks and stuff, but all of it was out of jest. It wasn't out of like, you know, meant to actually cause any real damage or anything like that. Nowadays, I think there's a lot of folks who get pretty offended at stuff, and I'm like, I don't understand that. But there's also, I feel like, a lot of itemizing, like, so folks like, you fit into this category and you do not leave this category. You know, I think there's a lot of that now. I don't think it's so much like you can just go anywhere and be anything kind of thing. Like, I feel like when we show up at Quaker Steak, I don't feel like we're part of the crowd. I think we're outsiders looking in, sort of thing. I don't feel like that. And I've never met anyone at Quaker Steak where I felt like they were welcoming. I've never felt that.
Yeah, I could see that. I think there's a lot of like people who are afraid to be challenged now, and like they're afraid to put their money where their mouth is, so to speak. Like where they're, you know, they feel like they got a chip on their shoulder, but they're afraid to prove it or anything, or they're afraid to be challenged. So like they'll talk some smack or run their mouth or whatnot, but then as soon as you chip back, they're like, "Oh, whoa," or, you know, and then they get all butthurt, and then, you know, they want to walk away. And act like you're their enemy, or they'll treat you like you're their enemy before you even know each other. Before they take one look at you and they judge you before they even talk or see you. And I think there's certain groups that are inherent to that, but I think all groups can be susceptible to that. I don't think it's unique to one.
I think there's always
There's jerks everywhere.
there's always ego involved.
Yeah.
I
think motorcycles lends itself to having a lot of ego.
A lot of ego, and there's some places where a lot of the ego's checked, and that's how Asphalt Junkies always was. It was always super checked. The main core group of Asphalt Junkie folks were very welcoming. They were also very confident in their own abilities. So if you came and you were talking a lot of smack and you couldn't put up, they would make you shut up because they would put you in your place.
When they wouldn't talk about, they wouldn't talk smack to you, they wouldn't reverberate what you were saying. They would just, the next day, they'd be like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. And the next day, they would just put you in your place very quickly.
Absolutely. Like, if you,
no words were needed to be exchanged.
And I always loved that. Like, I always really appreciated that. You'd get, inevitably, we'd always get some new guy on the forum, and he'd be like, oh, I'll race any of you fools, and like, one, the street is not a racetrack, dude. We're not actually racing out there. We're just going out and riding some twisty roads and having fun with our friends. But if you'd like to come out on a ride, you're welcome. Just remember, we're not out to kill each other, so we'd appreciate if you wouldn't try to kill us. And the other thing, too, is please wear all of your gear. We're going to go, at a spirited pace. So we don't want you, if you crash, we don't want you to die. And the last thing...
So considerate.
The last thing we would ask of you is to please ride within your limits. That's all the Asphalt Junkies would say to you. And then you'd come out and you could be talking all that crap about how fast you are and all that good stuff. Man, they would just put you in your place. You'd feel like an idiot because those guys were fast. Shoot, what's some of the other parts of the scene?
I don't know. We touched on all the items that I thought needed to be touched on.
There was one other thing that I was trying to remember. Do you have anything else, Travis?
No, I think I got something else to think about for us to all think on. Is that, looking at motorcycles as a whole, as a community versus other communities, such as car communities or
I think that's a good point.
other things like that. There's the off-road community, and I think maybe dirt bikes sometimes can be separated from street bikes.
I absolutely think dirt bikes can be separated from street bikes. It's just such a different thing. It is. Yes, they're both two-wheeled, engine-powered, machines, but the riding is so much different. The folks you meet are so much different. The places you go are so much different. It's just not. It's not the same, and it has less to do with literally off-road versus road, and more to do with the access to it. Dirt requires special access. Road does not. You can literally leave your driveway and you're riding.
Yep.
Dirt's just like it's unique, and it's a small community. It's a competitive community. A lot of folks are really competitive in dirt.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sharp learning curve. It's a very steep learning curve. It's very hard. It's very technical and difficult. So usually, if you're a really, really talented dirt rider, you're going to be a very talented street rider.
Yep.
That's typical. But if you're a very talented street rider, you're not necessarily going to be a very good dirt rider. You might be, but
I would not be.
I find that folks who do stunts, like they go to the parking lots and they do all the circle wheelies and do all that kind of stuff, those folks tend to be good dirt riders because it has a lot of crossover as far as control goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like you were saying, motorcycles versus the world. How does it stack up to other, and we'll stick to more like hobby-based activities. Like, how does motorcycle culture differ from car culture?
I don't know, honestly. I think it's pretty similar. But I do think that in car culture, it's less of driving cars than motorcycles is to riding motorcycles. There's a lot more riding that goes along. Like, people don't just get around and drive their cars together as much as I feel like people on motorcycles get motorcycles and ride together.
I think there's there's a fair bit of car driving too as well. I mean, especially down in the mountains, there's definitely a lot of car driving that goes on.
Yeah, I would say like in that, but I've been into cars before motorcycles, and I mean, I never went on a mountains trip.
I would say that's how most car folks are. They've never gone on these trips. No one's ever even considered doing a track day. Like,
Yeah, and like I
maybe
know,
maybe autocross.
yeah,
but-
autocross. I have been to one of those events where they just like set it up in a parking lot,
I've driven autocross
and that's like
back in those
Yeah.
days.
I rode in somebody's car, and I'm just like, holy shit! Like, it felt like it was so bad for that car.
Yeah, you're beating the crap out of
Oh
them.
yeah.
Whereas when you beat a motorcycle, I feel like it's not the same as like bragging on a car.
Yeah, the motorcycles, it's more designed for it.
Correct.
Well, one thing I think is definitely different is that a lot of people that have that are part of these clubs, sometimes that car is their car. That's their transportation all the time. So whatever they're doing, wherever they're going, if they're going to the grocery store, if they're, going out to eat, going to work, like that's what they drive to work is their, hopped up Jetta or, whatever, if they have a Mustang or, whatever their flavor is. Motorcycles, at least in our country, primarily are viewed as recreational. Accessories, they're toys. So most people that own motorcycles, it's a toy, so they don't use it all the time. So going out on a ride is the purpose to use it. Whereas somebody with a car, it's like, well, they drive their car all the time every day. They don't necessarily feel the need to go out and drive it more.
I always felt like cars, the car culture, the car scene, they don't if you're not part of like their chosen clique, then they're not very welcoming to you. Like if you showed up to a Nissan car meet with a Honda, they wouldn't be like, hell yeah, man, come on in. They'd be like, hey, you don't have a Nissan, you don't belong here.
Would they exert all of their big Ultima energy upon me?
Yeah. And where bikes, I think, aside from like Harleys versus sport bikes, if you show up to a sport bike meet, they don't really care what bike you're on. So I think there's more acceptance of less brand loyalty and all that kind of stuff in the motorcycling world. I also feel like for the average person, just average folks, whether you're average car driver or average motorcycle rider, there's more skill required for motorcycles.
Yes.
So I think that
Everybody can drive a car. Not everybody can ride a motorcycle.
and I think us motorcyclists know that, and I think that we can be a little pompous because of it. Where we're like, we're better than you because we ride motorcycles. I think that we can come off that way a bit, but to car folks,
That's because they're just out here trying to kill us every day.
But in all fairness, I do think, and this is coming from my biased opinion, but I never really chased after like proper drive technique, any kind of racecraft, doing that sort of thing with cars. I never really. I mean, I did some
No.
autocrossing. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just trying to go fast, and I was trying to drive it like I drove the rental go-karts I did when I was a kid. You know, like I was just trying to go fast. I didn't know nothing about it.
Can we rent cars and autocross them?
I don't know about autocross them, but we can track day them. There's rental companies that do that.
Oh no, I mean like let's go to the National at the airport and rent some Sonatas
Oh,
and do an autocross.
no joke. Guy I used to supermoto with, Dustin May, man, like, and he's like fastest supermoto guy I know. He's AMA pro and like he's badass. He rented. Oh yeah, you're on the edge of your seat on
I
this.
am. I want to know.
Oh, you're gonna love it. He rented a Ford F-150 from U-Haul
Oh yes.
for $20
Hell yeah.
and took it to an autocross event.
Yes.
And he actually did really good.
See, this is what we need to do.
Like hilarious, hilarious stuff. Now I thought you were talking about like renting it from the
No,
people running the
no.
show.
We just want to go to
You
like
want to take like an
fair-
Enterprise to
Oh,
an
yeah,
autocross
hell
event.
yeah.
They're Enterprise, they'll pick you up.
Exactly.
Because I was thinking you were like,
No. I don't want a track prepped car. I just want like a family sedan.
you can go to certain racetracks and rent like Ferraris and Lamborghinis.
No,
and-
that's stupid.
and it's not that expensive. It's only like $200 or $300 to go do.
But like that wouldn't be fun.
And you only get like 2 sessions with the thing. You don't get a ton of time.
I
on it.
want a whole day with the big Ultima Energy supplied by National Rent-A-Car. Or maybe Dollar.
You'd be a Murano
Hurts.
to pass that up.
Exactly.
Don't Ultimas have CVT transmissions?
They do.
Yeah, that's what like all Nissan does anymore.
So it'd be like riding. That's the car version of a scooter.
Well, you know
Yeah,
that
actually.
CVTs are banned in F1 racing.
yeah, because they're that great.
Exactly.
So CVT, basically what you're saying is Formula One is scared of scooters.
Correct. When are we going to start our own scooter racing series?
We can start it whenever you like. I race them every time I get on them.
Well, yeah, because yours only goes 63 on a good day.
It's done 75 under its own power.
Downhill.
How big of a semi truck
perfect
were you
conditions.
behind?
with a draft.
No, when I'm behind a semi truck, I can roll 75 like it's nothing. Uphill, downhill, wind, doesn't matter.
I'd like to see a tack on that thing. I'd like to see how fast that motor's screaming doing 75.
It doesn't
like,
matter.
is it
All of
technically
it-
over revving?
No, it's not. It used to be. It has a hard limiter, and it used to be knocking against the hard limiter at 68. But ever since I put those transmission parts in,
For the third time.
yeah, they keep chewing up. But the at 68, I'm nowhere near rev limiter, and at 75, I feel like I'm starting to get close to rev limiter, but it's still not there. I bet it's about 78 now for rev limiter. I don't know. I might have gone faster than 78. I might have seen 79 one time.
But never 80.
Never 80. I would never hit 80 on it.
It's probably not even programmed to display 80. They probably never thought it would get that fast.
Well, apparently so, because the scooter swap shop has all kinds of parts to get you over 80 mile an hour on an ADV 150.
And you haven't bought them because?
I don't want to big bore it.
Yes, you do.
No.
This is the solution to all your problems.
No.
You don't need a T-Max.
No.
You don't need an X-Max.
No.
You don't need a C400 GT. You just need a big bore ADV 150.
If you big bore it, you got to tune it. If you tune it, you end up losing all your fuel economy.
So it goes from what, like 90 to 75?
Like 80 to like 65. But then my fuel range drops to like 100 miles.
Well,
But then you're
we
not
still
you're not
have
wide
Travis.
open throttle all the time though. So maybe you will get the economy back because you're not wide open all the time.
I doubt
And
it.
just remember, that range would still be more range than a Honda Elite 250.
That's right. I mean,
He's still the limiting factor.
Yes.
there's really no downside here. I'm seeing.
There was a ADV 150 for sale. I think he was near Chicago, and he had big bore plus 2 mil crank.
Was this the one with 55,000 miles?
No, this one had like no miles on it, and he wants $6,000 for the thing.
Oof.
But this is the kicker: those bikes are rated at 13 horsepower out of the box, and that's at the crank, not at the wheel. This thing threw down like 22 wheel horsepower, so it's like double, if not higher, the horsepower. So it's probably a ripper.
So it's possible.
But I don't want to spend $6,000 on an ADV 150. I'd much rather get an X-Max.
Or just get some power parts.
No. Your China crap power parts are not good for traveling. As my
As I've
transmission
said
will tell you.
before,
Mine have been fine.
what the Chinese do is they take Japanese engineering and make it better.
That is completely untrue.
That is categorically true.
So all of these parts aren't just factory repops like you're using, which are probably fine because all they're doing is manufacturing stuff that Honda engineered. The stuff I'm talking about is Chinese-made performance parts where they have to do the engineering, and they're not that great at it. So
But now, to get back to our topic at hand, what about scooter scene?
in the United States,
Well, I
Is
mean,
there
the thing
one?
is, there is no scooter scene, so I think that we need to be the pioneers of scooting.
of scooterdom.
Yes.
Okay, so we need to be the forefathers of scooterdom.
Yes, we
In
are
the
the
United
founding
States.
fathers of scooterdom in the United States.
That would check out.
Scooterdom is spelled scooter dumb, D-U-M-B.
Yeah. I can't remember how many times I've ever seen scooters out. Oh, no, I'm sorry. There is. Completely forgot. There's a scooter club.
There's the one, oh yeah.
Yeah.
I remember the one time Johnny Westside and I were at Willow.
Did you guys see him go
And the
by?
scooter gang, no, they swarmed us. There was scooters galore, and we're just sitting there like, what is going on?
Out of there's a scooter dealership in Cincinnati. It's called Metro Scooter, and out of there he hosts big scooter rides. And the Big Scooter Group in Ohio, my favorite motorcycle club name ever, is the Mighty Ohio Scooter Club. I love that name. The Mighty Ohio Scooter Club.
Oh, yes.
That's excellent. Were you with me that one day that, like, I'm not exaggerating. I think it was about 200 scooters.
Maybe. I remember seeing some scooters around. There
They
was
just,
like a
like-
huge conglomerate of them just showed up out of
When
nowhere.
scooters assemble, scooters roll deep.
It was deep, and they just like we weren't at Willow. We weren't chilling nowhere. We were riding, and I think we were going north on 22, and they were coming south on 22. They just kept coming.
I think that was the same day because John and I were parked at Willow, and I think you guys were out.
and I'm like they were like kept rolling
Oh,
by
yeah.
us, and I like kept waving at them, and I'm like, dude, my hand's getting tired. Like, holy crap! I wanted to be a part of that so bad. That looked like so much fun. I saw something similar in the Smoky Mountains. They have something called the Small Bore Rally, and at the Small Bore Rally, it's like 1,000 scooters show up, and they just go terrorize the mountains. And I'm like, this sounds amazing. So I kind of want to get down to one of those events.
Scoot so hard.
Oh yeah, scoot for life.
Make some gap passes on the scoots.
Oh, 100%. Which
Drag some hard parts.
we're gonna do that this season.
Oh, for sure.
We're gonna hard pass on scoots with. You think John will come? He's got to come for that.
That's a hard
got it.
question to answer. I'd like to think he would want to.
He would want to, but the him wanting to versus actually nailing it down to do it is a whole different story.
It's a commitment thing. It's like hard to get him to commit to something in the future.
Oh, one other group of folks we didn't touch on that you got exposed to for the first time ever. Track bros. What do you think of track bros?
I don't know. Did I really get exposed that much?
Yeah, you didn't have super strong exposure, especially because we had some rain come through and like a lot of
Well,
people
and, like,
scattered.
The average person in novice group is not a track bro.
So I've come across a lot of track bros, and Jessica and I were just talking about this earlier today. The guys that like quit riding street to only do track.
Oh yeah, we were talking about that at dinner.
Yeah, and you know, I've never understood it. Like why a lot of the discussions go down like,
You're denying yourself the joy of riding.
well, usually it's like, well, I don't. Usually they'll say something like they don't ride street anymore, and as if riding street is somehow beneath them.
Well, that or like it's bad.
And now all they do is track. Like as soon as you get a hit of that track pipe, you'll never go back. And I'm like, dude, I've ridden at the racetrack
Well, it was fun, but like it didn't.
plenty of times, and I've never
It did not scratch the itch of riding on the street.
didn't. I think you told me that when we were getting ready to go down to Jennings, and you had mentioned that other folks had warned you that when you
Well, yeah,
do a
once you
track
do
day,
it, yeah,
you're like never want to go back.
yeah,
Did that happen for you?
no.
No. I'm like,
I mean, it was fun. Like I liked it a lot.
it's a fun thing to go do, but it's not like,
but I still like shred and twisties.
you know, it's not like that first hit of crack cocaine where you're like, yes, this is the thing I want to do for the rest of my life. You're more like, hey, that was a fun weekend. It was pretty expensive. I think I'd like to do that again at some point. And then that's that. You're kind of over.
I mean,
at
yeah,
that
like
point.
the fact that you can get on track, you don't have to worry about problems with the road, things on the pavement, and all that.
Yep.
Like that's out of the picture. So you can just focus on you and riding. Whereas on the street, you have to worry about traffic, you have to worry about potholes, shit on the road.
The unknown.
Correct.
Yep.
So it's nice to be on the track and not have to worry about that type of stuff.
You don't have to leave a margin for error on the
Correct.
track. You can put it all out there and see what you're capable of. Versus the street where you always have to ride with that little margin of error, saying like, hey, if I go around this blind corner, if there's going to be a patch of gravel or a dog or a tow truck or whatever the hell, I need to be able to react to that and avoid it. And you're always trying to manage risk where on the racetrack, you're trying to manage risk in a totally different way. You're like, you're willing to go to 100% of your skill level, but maybe you're willing to try up to 110% of your skill level, depending on how risky you're feeling that at that moment, how confident you're feeling in yourself and in your bike and in your tires and all that sort of thing. So, track is definitely a good place to learn your limitations. It's also a good place to grow your limitations and widen that out. But ultimately, it's not like this amazing thing that was going to replace everything else.
Correct.
So I wanted to bring that up just because Jessica talked. She had mentioned that too, and I was like, yeah, I think the people who,
It's silly.
yeah, that's the only riding they do. Which I mean, whatever. If that's your thing, cool. That's fine. But I don't think that it's for everyone, and
No.
I don't think that literally everyone that tries track is going to just be track bros from the rest of their life. I don't care for that sort of opinion or attitude.
It's also really expensive.
It's so expensive.
But
It's
even
like-
if I had unlimited money, I still would ride on the street.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
I like it.
And there's a certain, I don't know, like there's,
It's not always about going as fast or as hard or trying to be as quick as possible
yeah,
on the street.
absolutely
Like
not.
there's a sense of, as the Harley guys would like to call it, freedom and all that kind of stuff, and like being out in the wind and being able to drive. Like if you're gonna,
Free eagles and bald spirits, brother.
yeah, if you're gonna tour and you're gonna see things, like motorcycles could be a fun way to do it.
And I think I always like adventure and adversity. And when I got into long distance riding, the riding itself is boring. You're cruising down a highway. Like it's not, exhilarating. The ride itself isn't very exhilarating, but the adventure is exhilarating because once you leave the safety and security of your home, your hometown, your home local roads, you leave all that security blanket behind, and all of a sudden you're just out there on this machine that you are absolutely reliant on, and if it fails, you're kind of screwed. I mean, not too bad. If you're in the United States, you can, call a tow truck about anywhere, but
But it's stripping layers of security, away.
Yeah.
You're removing all these layers of safety that you would have if you were taking a car or if you were taking some other form of transport, if you were flying or something. It removes all these layers. It leaves you a little bit vulnerable, and that's kind of the point, is to be a little bit vulnerable, to have a little bit of like uncertainty ahead of you. It's why would people go to the jungle and wade through the jungle and deal with all the things and risk being hurt or killed or whatever? It's for the experience. It's the exhilaration of getting your heart going or getting something, a new experience out of it.
and like, it's the adventure of the unknown. And like my favorite Fort9 video, the TW200 video, he has that great line in there that was talking about, I don't know it, word for word, but it was something like he ventured out into the great unknown, and all he found there was the road back home. And I was like, that is such a fantastic line, because it's like you go out you plan this massive, huge event that you're gonna go ride your motorcycle to Timbuktu and back. Or even cooler, if you just point your motorcycle in a direction and ride, and you have no plan or anything like that. You just go out and ride. I love that. Like it's not super challenging from like a technical standpoint, but it is challenging from like an endurance standpoint and from a mental standpoint, like having the mental strength to get through it. And I think track bros are missing out on a lot of that kind of stuff, where like, hey, yeah, you have technical riding ability and you can go fast. Cool. That's one facet of motorcycling. Motorcycling has so many more things that it can offer. So that's why I don't understand those folks.
Yeah, I think they missed out on a lot of that it's not.
Well,
It
but
doesn't
they
always
also,
have to be about that.
in most cases, haven't they done that before? And then they're like, oh, I just got on the track, and now this is all I ever want to do.
Not necessarily. Some of them are born on the track and they've never even rode on the
Mm-hmm.
street.
Yep, I've seen a lot of track pros never even have a license. And like I said, that's
Well, you
that's
can
fine.
think about like some of the racers that professionally race.
Like,
you know,
Tuna doesn't
overseas
ride
and
on the
stuff.
street, does he?
No. He has shown up to bike nights and stuff before riding. It's hard for him because he has 6 kids and a wife,
Yeah.
so he can't take all of it. And his kids and his wife go everywhere with him. So he can't really take his kids on a bike because he's got so many of them. But
Sidecar.
don't put it past him.
His side bus.
And usually when I see him ride something on the street, it is a very odd bike. And usually it's something really old, really crusty, kind of falling apart, barely runs.
So, like, Cafe Racer.
Well, it's a cafe racer before it's turned into a cafe
a
racer.
pre-cafe'd.
A pre-cafe'd bike, which is just a UJM. And that's usually what you see him on, is just some UJM that's like, he found it in a dumpster and now he's riding it, So he has ridden on the streets, and prior to track riding, he rode street bikes. It's kind of how he met all the guys, and he didn't even like do track days. His first time on track was to get his provisional race license. His second time on track was to enter a race. That's how Tuna is. He doesn't like just mess around with that kind of stuff. He just goes straight for full bore and nothing short of it.
Well, that's another kind of subset too. Is the racers versus the track day guys?
Oh, 100%. Track day bros, worth making fun of. Racers, absolutely respect. For a guy to go out there and not only, push his talent, push his skills, but to actually pit it up against other guys who are also talented and skillful, that takes a bit of gusto that you have to have.
It's a blood for blood event,
and it's very much speaking from experience here. Getting on a racetrack and racing other folks, it's a totally weird experience. It's almost out of body. Your first time on that starting grid, that race starter comes out. As soon as that race starter puts the number plate up, something happens to you, and it's hard to explain because I've experienced it in dirt riding, I've experienced it in asphalt track, and racers refer to it as red mist when the red mist takes over. But
Sierra Mist.
Travis got to
cherry
experience
flavored.
It's red mist is real. It happens, dude. Like you get out on that freaking grid.
It's like roid raging.
Dude, I don't know what happens, but it happens.
You just turn into an animal.
And like, you go from like literally 30 seconds before, you're best friends with all the people next to you. You guys are like knuckle bumping and high fiving and hey, this is going to be awesome. And then the race starter comes out, and you go into full concentration, face of determination. And you will kill the person next to you. You will slit their freaking throats. You do not care about them. You will wreck them. It does not matter. You're like fully prepared and ready to just pile your bike up into anything and everything. You do not care about crashing. Like all of that goes by the wayside for at least the first couple corners. And then after the first couple corners, the race spreads out and the grid kind of spreads out. It isn't as bar to bar. Once that kind of happens, then your more rational mind takes back over and you're like, oh yeah, I don't want to die and I don't want to get hurt. So I'm gonna chill now. So then you're just kind of like trying to defend your position at that point. But yeah. Racers, absolutely respect. They put themselves on the line, and most of them are doing it for nothing, but just they're doing it for the game. They're doing it for the hell of it, for the victory, for the all that sort. They win nothing. It just costs a lot of money.
Yep.
If you want to learn how to make $1 million racing, start with $2 million.
More than that.
I guarantee you that's how it's happened. Like, it is an extremely expensive thing to go do. It is very purposeless, and it's amazing. It's exhilarating. There's nothing like it. And if you ever get stuck in your journey of becoming a better motorcycle rider, like, and more specifically, like, you're into sporty riding, you're like going around corners, stuff like that. If you ever get stuck in growing your skill level, sign up for a race. I guarantee you will push into the next skill level, because that's what it takes. It takes the red mist taking over and making you less risk adverse, like to where you're not afraid of risk. Because on a normal track day, you still have that fear in the back of your mind where you're like, hey, I don't want to pile this thing up. But you get into a race for those first couple corners, you're like, I will kill everybody here. I do not care.
You can even get that at a track day when you get like you kind of get you going around, you know, and you get kind of paired up with somebody real close to you, or
you're
somebody
try-
comes around and passes you.
You're trying to drag race them, and
And-
they won't give up.
Yep.
Yeah, you'll feel that red mist kind of
Yep.
kicking.
You get that kind of kicking in. They get in front of you and they're taking a couple corners, and you're like, I'm gonna get after that guy. You know, I'm gonna get him.
Especially if they're parking it in the corners, you're like, oh, I'm gonna just pass
Yep.
the shit out of this guy.
Electric bike man.
That's who I was going to refer to.
Yeah. See, exactly. See,
That
you've experienced it.
You felt the
So
red mist come
terrible.
on. But dude, there ain't nothing like it when, like, track day red mist versus getting on a race grid.
Oh yeah, they're different. They're definitely different.
The race grid is so much more intense. It's awesome. It can be overwhelming. Like it's like a combination of excitement, fear, bloodthirst. Like it's so many. It's I don't even know how to describe it, man. It's awesome. It's a very very powerful feeling. And I've only podiumed. I've podiumed races on my 450 Supermoto, but to be fair, I podiumed and there was like 2 other people racing, so we all podiumed by default. But the one that I'm proud of, the one I'm genuinely proud of, is when I put my XR100 on the box. I earned every bit of that. I started in like 7th or 8th place. The grid had like 12 or 15 riders in it, so I was about mid-pack or so, and I climbed up and I put it on the box, and it was the guy that was in 3rd place was so hard to pass. I was faster than he was, but he was like, he knew how to ride a motorcycle to make himself 10 feet wide. I just could not get around him. And it got to a point where I was like, I'm going to kill this guy. Like, I can't stand him. And I finally got around him, and it wasn't the white flag. It was the lap before the white flag. But by that time, we had lost so much pace off of the 2nd place and 1st place guy that there was just no possible way I was going to catch him. So I put it on the box, and I ended up in 3rd. But I had earned every last bit of that. And that wasn't even the greatest race I ever did. The greatest race I ever did was against my friend Nathan. You've met Nathan before.
Mm.
Little short guy, looks like a troll. I call him a troll.
Yes.
The holes in his ears.
Yeah, he has
Yes.
a troll belly. Little Nathan's actually a fast dude, especially on XR100s. He's pretty dang quick at them. Nate and I, we were at Pittsburgh, and we were battling for 6th place. 6th. Like, it's a place that doesn't even matter. We weren't even top 5. We're nobodies. But he and I were battling for 6th place. And when the race was over, Nate got me, and he won. He got 6th place. He won 6th place. I got 7th place. Both of us got a standing ovation because our racing was that heated. Was that I bet he and I passed each other 30, 40 times throughout the thing. It was multiple times per lap, and there was I think there was 10 laps at Pittsburgh. It was a 10-lap race, and it was multiple times. Like, we passed each other 3 times in the same corner. That's how he'd pass me on entry. I'd pass him back on at Apex, and then he'd pass me back on exit. It was that tight, that close of racing. And the guys that were ahead of us, they were so far ahead of us that they'd checked out, and all of them were riding individually. So they were just out there cutting laps. All the guys behind us, we'd left behind. So it was just me and Nate battling hard. Since we're friends, we're even more willing to kill each other. I think my skill in that race alone grew 20, 30%, because I'd never been so willing to go so much faster than someone else than in that race, because I did not want Nate to be ahead of me. So I absolutely respect racing, and I would recommend that if you are interested, to go try it, because if you want to grow your skill, that's definitely the place to do it.
Maybe.
Well, you got
I don't want to die.
you got pretty quick out there at G&J last time we were out.
We have another year to figure that out.
This is normally when the graphic shows up.
Here we go.